The Citizen Mike Show. News. Commentary. Interviews. The Citizen Mike Show starts now.
Welcome to the Citizen Mike Show. Thanks for tuning in. We do appreciate it. My name is Mike Burdinsky. On that split screen over there somewhere is Christopher K. Shortell. Chris, good to see you. Good to see that you're weathering the budget season. I think that may be more of a threat to you than anything else. I'm not really sure. We'll hear from you on that. We had a budget workshop, or you guys had a budget workshop, dealing with the Board of Education. I looked at some of the paperwork that came out of that, and my takeaway was they were going to be working with a surplus this year of over 2.2 million. I know they had aspirations for that money, but they're going to have about 2.2 million left over. And in their, I guess I'll call it a 2% fund, a rainy day fund, whatever you want to call it, they have a 2% fund. After they spend some money there, they're going to have about, 430,000 left over in that. So what's your takeaway? Are you any closer to a zero tax increase? Just what's your impression?
Well, on election night, national, there's always, they talk about, the path. Romney has a path, or Hillary has a path to the white, the state, the blue wall or whatever. So I think that the path to the zero got a little more clearer or complicated, depending on who you are, after last night, because the Board of Ed, I thought, did a good job. I thought Dr. Menzo did a good job of talking about how they were planning to spend all that money.
Whoa, wait, who's this?
Whoa.
Who's this? Erin Corso, Republican member of the Board of Education. I don't know how I got onto the Citizen Mike Show, but we were just beginning to talk about you guys. So thanks for popping on, Erin. Let's talk about the meeting. I'm also glad you showed up because we can stop Chris from talking and give the microphone to you. So what was your takeaway from the Board of Education budget workshop?
Yep, so the board proposed $107.1 million budget. And the mayor gave us 105.8. So I think it's pretty typical. I think he's very generous and always gives us a percentage raise, however you want to call it. But we did have a difference of $1.2 million that we had to kind of make up. So I think a lot of people get confused between this year's budget, the 19-20 budget, where we're going to have an overage, and next year's budget, where we have a deficit. So we were able to take some money from this year's budget and pre-purchase some things that we had requested from next year's budget. So that knocked off about $500,000. So we were down to $737,000 that we really needed to recover. And with some creativity, we were able to do that all the way up to about $214,000. So there's nothing from this year's budget that we can put into next year's budget that would go towards a reoccurring expense. It has to go towards kind of like a one-time purchase. So it wouldn't be able to go towards teacher salary or anything that would be costing the district in the long run. So we're still about $214,000 short of what we requested, but I think we're in a really good spot considering.
Okay, so it sounds like you came away with a good feeling. About how those counselors treated you, treated the budget, treated your presentation. You don't feel, I guess, roughed up too much. Would that be a fair assessment?
Correct.
And and Brother Shortell, did he ask any, challenging questions, or did he kind of roll over for you guys?
I'll let him respond to that.
Well, not yet. I just wanted to see if you had an
He doesn't
answer.
want me to respond.
Okay, so I want to change the subject on you, Erin. Distance learning has been a challenge all over the country, actually all over the world. It's got a lot of attention, not only in elementary grades, middle school, high school, but also in colleges and universities. Some universities are opening up in the fall. Some are on the fence. I gather that the school year is over for classroom participation in Wallingford, but distance learning goes on. Is that right?
That's correct.
So,
yep.
I don't even know what it is. Can you just walk me through what that is, distance learning?
Sure. So basically, teachers are using a platform called Google Classroom. And so it's an interactive platform, and where they can post lessons and assignments, and they can do video chats with their students, or they can do them one-on-one if they're doing tutoring or whatever it may be. So right now, learning is occurring that way via computer. So I'm doing it personally for my own school district. I'm on, and then I have 4 kids at home who are also on all day long. And there are some challenges. There's certainly some challenges.
Describe some of those challenges. What makes it tough?
Yeah. So I think when parents are working at home, like for example, when we're working at home and we have 4 kids in the house who need to be on also. So basically, you're going to have some sort of internet challenges, lag or whatever. But realistically, not all my children are completely independent, so they need help from me to kind of get started and get going, or if they have a question while they're working, or they need to log into another website and they need the password, whatever it may be. There's a bunch of different challenges. So I think for working parents who are working from home, that's probably the biggest challenge.
So once you get over the login hurdle, once the students get over that and a screen opens up, is there a live teacher there, or how does that work?
So the latest version of our distance learning plan does include live lessons at every level. So originally, when we first made the plan, Dr. Menzo actually got out pretty well ahead of the game. School was canceled that Friday. We left school on Thursday, I think it was the 12th or the 11th. School's canceled Friday. Nobody knows what's going to happen, right? We were all we didn't really know what was going on. So I think we kind of thought it would be a 2-week thing and then we would be back. But by the following Wednesday, he had professional development for his teachers. By Thursday of the following week, so it wasn't even a full week, full week. By Thursday of the following week, Wallingford was live online. So quite a few districts were not at that point. We were live online, and we had hit the ground running. We pivoted after a couple weeks because things changed. We knew we were going to be out till May 20th. And then we did a survey. We surveyed families and kind of get a feel for how things were going. And we made some changes. One of the big takeaways from the survey was that parents wanted live teaching. So now at this point, teachers are live online teaching. Not all students can get to those lessons. So the lessons are typically posted afterwards if you can't get there live online.
So but live online doesn't mean an image of a teacher in a classroom or an image of a teacher behind her desk in her basement office, does it? Or does it?
Yes.
It does.
Absolutely.
So they see
interacting with their teachers. Yeah, you see your whole classmates. So it's really cute to see first graders. Well, they got their little headphones on and their teachers walking them through lessons, and she's calling on them, different one, just like you would do in a classroom, but you're watching it through the computer. So
before I get Chris on, because he's a dad, he's got some experience. Before I get him on, what's your assessment as to the impact on achievement, this distance learning, as it's set up right now?
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's not ideal, but it's the best we can do at this point. So do I think our students are going to be set back because of it? I think the whole state is in the same position. So, you know, I think there will be some reteaching that needs to happen. You know, and some review in the fall, if we get back in the fall or whenever we get back. And certainly some ironing out over the summer if we need to extend distance learning a little bit more. But overall, I think our teachers are doing an excellent job.
Chris, yeah, sorry, Erin, I wanted to make sure we get the dad's perspective. How do you see it, Chris, from your perspective?
You know, I work from home anyway, and I have this little nook here is in our master bedroom. It looks like my man cave, but it's actually just this little part of our master bedroom. I go downstairs to get my water, get my, you know, protein shake, and I see my wife working with my third grader, and I just keep going. I mean, she's with him all day, you know. I'm like, oh, okay, let's leave that alone. So I think that she could come on and talk to you about it, but I think that I agree with Erin. I mean, I think I have some friends in other districts, and it definitely felt like Wallingford was ahead of the curve, especially in those first few weeks. We were already up, and other districts were trying to figure it out. And I also appreciate there was a survey, and they adjusted. Wednesdays are now kind of learn on your own days, so that I think that helped. So I think that it's been sort of a trial by error thing, and I think it's all good, and it's gonna get through it. I feel really bad for the seniors. I feel bad for people in promotion situations, like the fifth graders going, like one of my kids going into a different building, the second graders going into a different building. So I think we still have some work to do I know the PTOs are involved trying to figure all that out, but I think overall it's gone as well as it could have, and probably better because of you know, being on top of it.
Erin, what do you think the kids are saying about all this? Are they, pick any level that you're most familiar with, but are they frustrated? Are they, I don't know. What do you think their reaction is?
So I think depending on your child, one of my really social kids is champing at the bit to get out and get with her friends, and you know, she's very good doing her work, but she's not happy to be cooped up. The boys in my house, I mean, they're doing their work. Sometimes it takes all day, but they're pretty good. I think kids are really resilient, and we don't give them enough credit at times. I think kids for the most part are more resilient than adults are. But I do also feel horribly for those seniors.
I know.
They're missing out on so much. I mean, spring of senior year is awesome. You know, so they're missing out on that, and that stinks.
I want to change the subject on you a little bit and take a more global, you know, a bigger picture from, instead of 5,000 feet up, maybe 50,000 feet up. I try to follow education issues as best I can, and then in the media that I get. And the Economist magazine is following closures pretty carefully. And I just want to read you a passage. I sent this to you earlier, and I think Chris has it too. So this is really more for the viewers. But here's what it says in part. Economist magazine: closures will also disproportionately hurt the youngest school children. Quote, you can make up for lost maths with summer school, but you can't easily do that with the stuff kids learn very young, said that this Mr. Dupke. He's an educator of some national repute. Social and emotional skills such as critical thinking, perseverance, and self-control are predictors of all sorts of things, from academic achievement and employment to health outcomes and the likelihood of ending up in jail. And whereas older children can be plonked in front of a computer, younger ones learn far more when digital learning, whether reading an ebook or watching a video, is adult supervised. Erin, give me your reaction.
Yeah. So there's parts of that I agree with, and parts of that I don't. So kids do, younger kids, our elementary kids, they learn a lot through play. And they learn to negotiate with each other, and they learn to read each other's, you know, facial expressions and all those things. But in terms of, he mentioned perseverance and critical thinking. I mean, our kids are persevering through a really difficult time right now. And in terms of critical thinking, the lessons that are being taught this way are requiring some forms of critical thinking. So I think that our little guys are missing out on the play aspect of things. I have a house full here, so they were playing with each other, but the houses that have a single one child, I feel really bad for those kids because they're pretty isolated right now. And I recognize that. I think we all recognize that.
As a final word, Erin, before you sign off, take a quick look for us into the future and into the fall. Do you think it's business as normal? Do you think?
It's really just up to the governor at this point. So whatever the governor's, whatever he decides, I think we have to come up with some alternatives in case whether, and this is just my opinion. I haven't discussed it on the board level yet. But I know that Wallingford is preparing for the case of not going back or going back partially. So they're already working on that.
Okay, let's make that the final word, sort of an optimistic note. Thanks for coming on the Citizen Mike Show again. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay.
Bye, Chris.
Bye.
Bye-bye. So, Chris, any thoughts on Erin Corso's comments on distance learning before we get back to the budget from your perspective?
No, I think she hit it. She's an educator, so she's not just a board member. I think she hit it on the head. The fall will be interesting. We'll see what happens. I've heard, not in Wallingford, just in stuff I read, that there's talk about freshmen and sophomores go on Mondays and juniors and seniors go on Tuesdays. Things like that. Yeah. In general, that might be a way to create more. I mean, I don't know. We'll have to see when we get there. But let's
get back to the budget, the overall town budget. One of the purposes of the workshop, a couple purposes of the workshop. I always thought these workshops are a great opportunity for counselors and the public too, but a great opportunity for counselors to learn how government works, not necessarily to, as I say, prowl for cuts necessarily, but it's very rare that you get a department head, in front of you and you get kind of ask anything you want, and as long as you can loosely tie it into a budget. Right. You can learn an awful lot if you ask the right questions and you pay attention and take notes and everything else. So I got a two-pronged question for you. Were you any closer, as a result of this Board of Education budget workshop, were you any closer to finding a part of that 1.3 million that we've been talking about that the council needs to get a freeze the mill rate? And did you learn anything at that budget workshop? And I know you were on the Board of Ed, but did anything come out that was sort of opened your eyes?
Well, let me answer I was the first part first. Yeah, I mean, I've been saying on this show, if you're a regular viewer of this show, you've heard me say every week, the Board of Ed's rolling in money. The Board of Ed's rolling in money. Well, they're spending it, as Erin said, and as Dr. Menzo said two nights ago. So, just me, I went into this budget cycle thinking, well, sure, we can get some of that money, that 1.2, from the Board of Ed. I don't think so anymore. They're already yielding $1 million. Not giving it back. I know you don't like when I say that, but
because it's not true. It's not that I don't.
It's not true.
It's not.
I know.
Even though it appears in the record journal that way, that they're giving it back, it's not true.
Right. It's right. But they are. They're already contributing $1 million.
Well, that's not true.
Oh God, there's $1 million. Okay, well, $1 million's going back to the
let's get
general fund.
They're going to end up the year, this current year, with $3.2 million as a surplus. When they end up that year with money in the bank, that money lapses by operation of law to the town's general fund. It becomes property of the town. It's not their money. They don't have a right to it. They don't get to keep it unless it's the policy of the council, forever now, and you bind all the councils in the future, say, well, whatever they end up with as a surplus, they get to keep. But that's not true, and that's not the law. So they're going to end up with a $3.2 million surplus. It lapses to the town. It becomes town property. And in the fall, when it comes time for the council to vote on whether or not to allow the Board of Ed to regain some of that surplus, the mayor in his budget is saying they're not regaining the first million, that's going to stay in the general fund. So it's not a matter of the board giving it back at all, but it continued. But I needed to clear that up because there's
it's a fair point.
Understanding out there.
And I brought this up at the hearing too, so I should have done a better job tonight. I'm just tired. I just came from a budget hearing. I got here
We'll give you a
minutes to spare. Yeah. They're actually going to end up, we think, with a $1.7 million surplus. That's where they are now, and then we will give them back $755,000 roughly, if that all works out. So to go back to your question, the zero tax increase, I am now. I'm not inclined to want to try to squeeze any of that out of the Board of Ed. So that's for me is a shift, because I've kind of gone into this thinking, well, sure, they should contribute to it. You asked if anything else was eye-opening. Oh, go ahead. Did you? Yeah,
it was the other part. I mean, I know you've been around the block, a few times. You've been on the Board of Ed. Was this just like any other workshop, really?
It kind of was. There's certain issues. The transportation issue we talked about. Obviously, COVID. Dr. Menzo gives us, a thorough presentation. What's eye-opening is the notion that the mayor is predicating part of his budget, and I think you've said this, on an unaudited number, on a projection. Something the mayor himself, and we haven't asked him yet, I probably will ask him before this is over. Mayor, so on the general government side, how are we looking?
Yeah.
How do I get, where is it? I just had here on my slides. How do I get this? You can't see it. The Board of Ed. How do I get that for general gov? What are you looking? So that's just, it's not eye-opening. It's just funny to me. It's ironic that,
yeah.
But no, I don't know there's any difference than any other year. I mean,
I just want to go over some numbers with you again, because I'm not sure I get it. I look at the same slides you looked at. I guess it's a PowerPoint presentation.
Sure.
And I see that they're ending the year with a surplus of, excluding the mayor's 1 million that he's going to not let go back to the Board of Ed. They're going to end up with about 2.2 million. Why isn't that 2.2 million fair game? Why can't you find?
They're not, because that's not the number they're saying. I'm looking at a slide here. They've committed 400,000 to purchases this year. They've committed another almost 600,000 to non-recurring strategic plan items in next year's budget.
Okay, so you've fallen into my trap, which is good.
You wanted. Okay.
You,
Wait, you're going to tell me we should tell them, no, you're not those blinds in Moran. We're going to take that and use it to offset taxes, and you can wait an extra year. Is that what you're going to tell me?
No, I'm going to tell you something more serious than that.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you something more serious than that. You're prowling around the general government to try to find savings in their budget. Mm-hmm. But general government's budget is just as committed to things, to line items and uses, mm-hmm. as the Board of Ed. Now you seem to be applying a double standard.
Okay.
Fire, police, all these big departments, they've come before you and they've said, we've committed our budget, we've committed our money, here are all the uses.
Right.
So why are you sort of picking on Board of Ed? I mean, just because the Board of Ed says something is committed, they can uncommit it. It's not legally binding. It's their aspiration. It's what they want to do. Just like general government, there's stuff they want to do. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, well, yeah, a commitment is not the same thing as an encumbrance, is what you're saying.
Something they go to an office and they sit down and there's a round table. And where do we want to commit? And then we'll come out and we'll tell the town council we've committed, and they'll believe hands off. That's not true.
Right, but I'm not. okay, I think the premise of your question is flawed. I'm not prowling around looking for cuts. I am not doing
We
that. I
want
don't think,
you to be.
what'd you say?
We want you to be.
You want me to be, right. You want me to slash fire and police.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. No, because I don't think there's savings there either. I think there's savings to be had, and there's ways to get at there's ways to get to it. And I think now other people have other ways. There's all sorts of places to go for the money. I just feel after last night that they also talked about they eliminated 11.5 FTEs. Now they said they were clear to say they did not do that because of the mayor.
What's an FTE? Full time.
It's a person. It's a position. Full-time equivalent. It's a person.
Okay.
So they eliminated 11.5 FTEs due to services not needed, and they are not repurposing those. Those aren't. So sometimes what they'll do is they will do that, and they will but then they'll say, but we need 4 extra kindergarten teachers, so we're going to pull it out of there. And they didn't. At least they said, I asked them, and they said no. 11.5. We didn't need the services for whatever reason. Those are lopped off the budget. So.
Well, I think what you're saying, if I may encapsulate, I think your thought is you're convinced their budget is stripped to the bone, that there isn't.
No, it's not stripped to the bone. I mean, none of these budgets are stripped to the bone. But I'm convinced that I'm not. They've committed enough to me that I think they're going to spend the money better than I thought maybe 3 months ago.
Where I'm trying to get to the bottom line. Can you reduce the Board of Ed's budget? Will you, Chris Shortell, support?
No, I'm less inclined to do that now than I was before Tuesday night.
Okay. So now, how do you read the temperature? How do you take the pulse of the rest of the counselors on that point?
I don't know. I would suspect. I don't know. I would suspect that it would be harder if people were agreed with me. If people felt like I felt going into it. It's based on the commentary, based on what was presented, based on the reactions to what was presented. I feel like coming out of it, I haven't talked to anyone. I mean, I have no insider, but I think it would. I don't know that there is. I don't know that you'd find five of us willing to go after them after Tuesday, after what they presented. I don't think, but I've been wrong before. For all I know, maybe I don't know. So, at the meeting, I think the only just to, if people out there didn't, I think Councilor Zandri, I think very just sort of said, well, he said, there's the $1 million they're giving back, but he made the point that was for him, that was enough, that he didn't feel we should go after any other money. He came out and said it. He was the only one. So, anyway, that's one concept. I would suspect others will probably agree with him, but I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to get sort of the bigger picture about the zero tax increase. I think we're further away from it than we were before this budget workshop. I think it's going to be harder. I mean, your vote is now less likely because you're not going to find material education cuts. You're not going to support that.
Correct. That's one way. I think that the getting to a zero with a hefty contribution from the Board of Ed is less likely. Doesn't mean the zero is less likely. It just means this path to the zero is maybe not a path anymore.
Well, you're taking away one of the paths. So.
Well, taking away one of them, but it doesn't. But again, there are other ways to do it. Name
one. Because I read the Record Journal article that.
Oh, here we go.
Wednesday. I don't know when this was.
Here we go.
It was yesterday.
It's yesterday.
And I read all the quotes of the counselors, and it seems like they're confused. I mean, they don't know which way to go.
That's not true.
They wring their hands and zero tax increase, but I don't know how to do it. They want a zero tax increase, but it's conditioned on stuff that's impossible. You have a couple of counselors saying we want the departments to voluntarily identify areas that they could reduce their budget. I mean, that's never going to happen. So when I hear that, I say, okay, there's going to be no tax freeze because no one's going to be able to, find a path, as you say, and that's where we are, right?
Okay, the quotes in the paper,
Yeah.
what do you want us to say? I mean, we are what, today's May 7th, and I think right as of today, 2 weeks from tonight is the motions meeting.
Right.
For those of you watching, the motions meeting is a special meeting where all the stuff happens on the budget, and it's a separate. In the old days, like when you were on the council, I think it was the same night as the budget vote, and I think at some point someone decided, why should we sit here for 6 hours? Let's get all the stuff people want to try. Let's get it out of the way the few days before, and then we get to the budget meeting. We just read all the motions and we do it. So the meeting where all this will come down, where the zero will happen or it won't, is 2 weeks from right now, from tonight. The Record Journal, what are we supposed to say out of the Record Journal? I think that people, I include myself in this, I don't want to commit. I'm not going to sit here. I mean, I say enough stuff on this show that God knows who's watching that's going to hold it against me, that you said this, I change my mind every day, and it's recorded. So I don't blame one counselor for anything they said in that article, because why should anyone have to commit at this stage of the process? We still have 2 weeks to go. And there's all sorts of different ways to get to a zero. So
On the other hand,
here we go.
no, there's one side of the coin and then there's the other side of the coin. On the other side of the coin, I think, if memory serves, the budget has been out since April 1.
Mhm.
Is that close to being right?
Well, that's legally the charter. I think, yeah, it legally came out. I mean, it has to come out April 1.
The budget?
Yeah, it's been in our hand. The police officer rolled up to my house and dropped it off on April 1.
So you've had 5 weeks.
Correct.
And you have a history of prior budgets to look over and agonize over.
Correct.
And you've had the 4 major departments come in front of you already. And there should be no confusion about how these hearings go or how the budget works. I mean, I read comments in the Record Journal that I'll go into and maybe you can explain this to me. You can go into the surplus, but not for recurring expenses. And when I read that, I took the 2 pieces of paper which comprised the article, crumpled it up, and I throw it in the wastebasket.
But the way it's often defended is it's said, well, you can't use savings for recurring expenses because then next year your recurring expenses are going to go up again. So you have to basically bump up your budget by that much more because you're guaranteed with municipal collectively bargained contracts. You have wage increases that are negotiated. So the argument in the abstract is a correct argument. As it is applied to Wallingford, it is incorrect because the mayor already does it. The mayor does it. The mayor balances the budget by applying 7.4. In this budget, 7.4 million is applied to balance the budget. Now, some have counter-argued. Wait a minute. But that you could say that goes in the mayor's mind. That 7.4 goes just to the one-time expenses in the budget. There aren't that many one-time expenses there aren't enough of them in the budget. And I've heard the argument that, well, yes, he does do it, but it's that 7.4 is for the new printers. And my response is the math. Even I know you're right. The dollar doesn't know what it's going toward, but there aren't enough of those in the budget to account for 7.4 million. So really, the argument is, should we use more of reserves to offset recurring costs? That's where you draw, and that's where you could make an argument. You could argue it's 7.4 is really, and that is high. It was down when I first got on the council. It was about 4.5. I don't know before that. I'm sure it's fluctuated up and down. 7.4 seems, and I have to go back and look, seems rather high. So one could argue, I don't care. He's using 7.4 to balance it, and even though he won't spend all, that's the other thing. He won't spend most of it. It's a cushion in case we don't get state funding. In case but one could argue, I'm not, that's my line in the sand. And that would be the correct way to phrase the argument. Not, oh, we can't use it for recurring. We already do use it for recurring.
So you asked
So
me,
that's,
you asked me about 5 minutes ago, what would I want the counselors to say? It's early in the process, according to you, and I say all meaningful stages have come and gone, and it's not early in the process.
I didn't say it was early. I think I just said it was in the middle of the process.
This is an experience, except for Christina Stada, it's an experienced council now. So what I would want them to say, some of them would say, we are going to take it from the reserves if we need to, and freeze the mill rate, period. Put a stake in the ground and drop the fund balance. Let me just finish. Drop the fund balance. That's the consequence. We don't know exactly how much the fund balance is going to go down because we don't know what the deficit is going to be in the fiscal year ending 2021. Or others can say, this budget, after looking at it for 5 weeks and listening to the larger department heads, which includes the Board of Ed, there is no material cuts, unless in some dream alternative universe they think there are. I like the mayor's budget. That's those who like the mayor's budget by now should say, I like the mayor's budget, it's going to stand, or I don't like the mayor's budget, we're freezing taxes by taking out of reserves if need be. Simple. Pick your corner. Very clear.
What if you haven't decided yet?
Well, get to it. Good night, everybody. Good night, Chris.